Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Ronkia and I create content on travel, career, and positive living. Please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the good stuff. Alright, in today's video, I'm talking all about long haul travel. Summer has summoned and I'm sure a lot of y'all are already planning trips and there is a possibility you may be taking a long haul flight this summer. So long haul flights are typically flights that extend beyond 6 hours. And so if you live in the US, for example, that might be a coast to coast flight. So thinking about East Coast all the way to West Coast, like if you were maybe doing like Maine to California, or it could also be a flight to maybe Hawaii. It could be a flight abroad, so overseas, maybe to Europe. Or even to South America as well. There are some destinations in South America that would be putting you at above 6 hours. When it comes to flying, period, it can be an experience for most people that they have to prepare for and or recover from, and all the more when it comes to long haul flights. So in this video, I'll be sharing some tips on how to survive long flights. Personally, for me, the longest flight I've ever been on was actually to Dubai, and this was a part one of a two-part trip to Nigeria, and so that flight was about 14 hours. It's something I've done, I think I've done that flight at least twice. And then of course, going to Nigeria through other places with layovers, I've also done long flights. So I'm not necessarily new to this. And there are some things that I've learned along the way that I think have made it bearable. First things first, when you are going to take a long flight, really a flight period, but especially a long flight, I think you really have to prepare accordingly. When it comes to preparing, that means doing your best ahead of time to de-stress, to make sure that you feel comfortable. You know, do what you can ahead of the travel so that whatever stress does come with the travel doesn't compound on whatever stress you already had. And part of preparation for me is to make sure that you have the things that you will probably need readily available. And so this includes things like chargers, maybe AirPods or headphones, you know, those sort of things that you would probably grab for on the plane that you might not necessarily be able to stick into a quick pocket. And so my recommendation is to actually put all of those things maybe in a pouch or in whatever your small personal item is that you're going to put under your seat. Oftentimes, depending on the flight dynamics, like if you're not on the aisle seat and maybe the people next to you, you don't really know them, they're knocked out the whole time, you might not want to necessarily get up and disturb them. And so having it somewhere that you can easily grab it without having to disturb anyone or without having to worry about if someone's going to be grumpy about letting you get up or not, I think is a good plan. Part of the pre-travel preparation for me is also making sure that you charge your electronics. I feel like things just go much smoother when your electronics are like fully charged. So charging your phone, charging your music player if that's separate, charging a camera if you need it, charging your Kindle, charging a portable charger, like any sort of electronic that you are going to need, making sure that all of those things are fully charged and making sure you also have the chargers with you. You also might want to consider packing along like a pillow, maybe a light blanket, eye mask, you know, those little additional things that really can add a little bit of comfort. Once again, things that you want to have readily available. And I would also add hygiene items, so thinking about things like chapstick, lotion, hand sanitizer, deodorant, toothbrush, like anything you know you're going to want to grab during the flight and feel refreshed. Another tip for surviving long flights is to be mindful of what you're wearing. I'm not going to tell you that you have to go to the airport wearing pajamas, neither am I going to say you should go to the airport wearing a three-piece suit, right? I think you want to figure out what's going to be most comfortable for you, what's going to work best for you, and what's going to allow you to have the best range of motion on the flight. I personally don't really like flying wearing jeans. I will do it, but jeans are not super comfortable if I want to start stretching, right? And so for me, I might opt to wear like a maxi dress over jeans. Now, of course, if it's cold or the destination I'm going to is cold, then, you know, I'm gonna suck it up and wear jeans. But those are the things I kind of put into consideration, right? Thinking about what I'm wearing and how I want to be able to move on the plane. There is, of course, a balance to strike between cute and comfortable. And so I would always prioritize comfortable over cute just because you want to be comfortable on a plane. Along with clothing, one thing that I personally like to take along with me are compression socks. And so the idea behind compression socks is that when you wear them, they help the blood in your legs circulate. For some people, when they sit down too long, the blood in their body starts to pool towards their feet, and so your blood is not circulating enough. So the compression socks kind of help counteract that by keeping pressure on your legs so that the blood just has to keep moving. Now, for some people, it's actually extremely beneficial to wear compression socks on planes, and for some others, it might not be super beneficial. If this is something you would consider, I would, of course, recommend running it by your doctor first, just making sure it's okay. But personally, for me, like I said, it's something that I occasionally like to do. Another tip for surviving long flights is to be mindful of your hydration and your diet. I think leading up to your flight, of course, make sure you're eating well. I mean, in general, in life, make sure you're eating well, make sure you're drinking enough. leading up to the flight, make sure you're doing that. And especially on the flight, be mindful of that. You know, the temperature and the general air within planes tends to be a little unpredictable sometimes. Sometimes I've been on planes that have felt extremely dry. And so for me, I'm not going to opt to have a Coke over water. I'm always going to choose water. I choose water most of the time anyway, but when you're on planes especially, it's extremely important to be mindful of like what exactly you're choosing to eat and drink, because you want to make sure that you're keeping your body as hydrated as possible. And so if you, let's say, are getting snacks passed out on the flight and they're like salty pretzels, if you're already feeling dehydrated or you're already feeling a little thirsty, that's not the time to eat the pretzels, okay? I'm gonna need you to put the pretzels down, ask for some water, and ask for some water again. But as I mentioned, just making sure that you are eating well and staying hydrated leading up to the flight and on the flight is super important. In addition to that, I would also say be easy on your digestive system. The thing about planes and being on planes is that they're not like regular conditions, right? Like it's not some sort of pressure chamber, but it's also not the regular conditions that you're used to. And so sometimes for some people, their stomach might get a little bit more sensitive. So this means that if you are being served something that you're not super familiar with, or you know sometimes troubles your stomach, I would honestly opt to not eat it. Now, since we're talking about hydration and diet, of course, my next tip is to try to be as active as possible. It's going to be hard because you are on a plane, so it is very, very much confined space, but I have found that, especially on long flights, if I can get up every so often, or even if I can't get up, if I can try to stretch my legs, it helps me feel a little bit better. Of course, I know this is dependent probably on where you're seated and all of that, but as much as is possible, I think it's good to get up. So hypothetically, let's say you're sitting on a window seat and you are not trying to get up too often to use the restroom. I would recommend that the few times that you do get up to use the restroom, see if you can actually walk around the plane at that time, if it's permissible. There are some flights where maybe if there's turbulence or whatever, they might tell you to stay seated. But if it is a time where they're a little bit more flexible and they don't mind you walking around, I would actually use that opportunity to kind of get up, stretch my legs, or just walk a bit back and forth. Another tip for surviving long flights is to be mindful of the timing of your flight. And so typically for long flights, especially I'm going to speak from the perspective of someone in the US flying maybe to Europe, you may end up being on a red-eye flight. So a red-eye flight is pretty much a flight that's overnight, and you would arrive in your destination by morning. Taking a red-eye flight might be ideal for someone who can easily knock out on a plane. So if you easily can knock out on a plane and you will feel well rested enough to go through your day in whatever destination you're going through, that can actually be a good way of surviving that flight. Now, if you're someone that doesn't necessarily sleep on planes, then you might want to maybe opt instead for a flight that would arrive at your destination maybe towards bedtime. In addition to timing, of course, prep for jet lag and also prep for the time difference. Finally, with long flights, the seat that you sit in is extremely important. And I'm not just talking about, are you in an aisle seat, a middle seat, or a window seat? Because I think that's what most people tend to think of. Or they think, are you economy, economy plus, business first? When it comes to picking your seats, there's a lot more at stake than just the class or the exact row. When you're choosing your seat, because airlines and airplanes are very different, that means that you might have two seats that are in economy that are both window seats, but one might have substantially more legroom than the other, or one might just be a little bit more comfortable in terms of how the seat feels when turbulence hits than another. So when you're trying to choose your seats, there are some resources out there that you can leverage online, such as Seat Guru, and these will show you, based on the airline that you are taking and the specific airplane model, the best seats to pick. Now, of course, you will have more seat options if you're able to book your seats early enough, so keep that in mind. Generally, my rule of thumb, especially if I'm trying to just choose between aisle or window, I would probably choose the window if I'm like traveling by myself and I really want to sleep a lot. Or if I know that maybe I don't plan on sleeping much during the flight, I would maybe choose the aisle seat. That way I can get up frequently enough. I can stretch, I can drink as much water as I want to drink and not have to worry about waking anyone up. So that's kind of like my rudimentary things. But as I mentioned, going to the sites like Seat Guru will help you get a bit of a deeper dive to help you make sure that you're choosing the best seat. I hope these tips are helpful as we are all looking forward to summer travel. As always, please make sure to like this video, share with others, and subscribe to my channel for more travel, career, and positive living content. See you in the next one.